Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Thursday's Q&A with Babette Haggerty. That's me, of Haggerty Dog Training. I'm so glad you're all here to make today's session. And we are live on Facebook as well as YouTube. But don't worry, if you miss this live, you're going to be able to watch the rerun. There are a few things that I want to talk about today. One is the Zen method of dog training. I've had a lot of other dog trainers actually who've been asking me about it, wondering when I'm finally going to get my dad's book, Zen and the Art of Dog Training, actually finished, completed, and published. And soon. I've been saying soon for, what year are we in? We're in 2021. He passed in 2006. So I've been saying soon for 15 years. And it's getting closer. It's getting closer. It's one of those things that I pick up, I put down, I pick up, I put back down. And, it's a matter also of doing it the justice it deserves. So we're going to talk a little bit about Zen and what exactly is the Zen method of dog training. But as well as a few other questions that have come through. One thing that I do want to recognize beforehand, before we get started on anything, is I want to acknowledge the life of Bob Jervis. It came to my attention the other day that he had passed away. For those of you that know Bob or don't know Bob, Bob was the director and the owner of National Canine Dog Training School in Columbus, Ohio. And in his very many decades there, he trained hundreds, probably thousands of people to become dog trainers. And I had the opportunity to meet Bob on several occasions. I've shared a few meals with Bob. He and I served on the IACP board of directors together. And one thing you can say about Bob was that he was a gentleman. He was definitely a gentle man. He was humble. He was kind. He was very generous in his spirit. He was generous with his knowledge. He was a great encourager. And he was always just that steady presence. I always smiled when he and I were at the same conference, and I would see him and he and I would have some exchange about dogs or just about life in general. And I'm very sad, to hear that he's passed. You never get enough time with people. And then when they're gone, you realize like, wow, I really should have picked up that phone or sent that email. But I know Bob is up there with a lot of other great dog trainers and probably talking dogs or just talking about life in his usual sweet, kind, calm demeanor. And so I just want us all to think about Bob Jervis. One thing that Bob was, he was a great servant. He was always wanting to serve and help others. And, if you take nothing else from today's Q&A, think about what you can do to help others. If we all woke up every morning and said, how can we be of service to another person? Whether it's the elderly person next door who might need help walking their dog, or maybe it's an ornery neighbor that's having a bad day and just saying hello to them and sprinkling some sunshine. That was Bob. He was always looking to be of service to people. And completely selflessly, there was never on his mind was never what's in it for me. It was always about what's for the greater good. And that was Bob. And if we all lived a little bit more like that, I think we'd live in a much nicer, kinder, gentler world. So please think of Bob this week and in the coming weeks, and think of how you could emulate him a little bit. So, Bob, I hope you're smiling and shining down and enjoying some good conversations about dogs with all the good ones that are up there. Now, another thing I want to talk to you guys about is I've had a few questions about Zen. What is the Zen method of dog training? My dad was working on this book for, in the early 90s. He told me it was something he was working on for about 25 years. And me being the bottom line kind of person that I am, like, just cut to the chase. I don't need the details. Just give me the bottom line. Just give me, a 2-3 sentence synopsis of what is the Zen method of dog training. He couldn't do it. And it's something that just is. It's not something unlike, for example, the Keeler method of dog training. You read a book, you take Tony Anchetta's course, you understand the Keeler method of dog training. Week 3, day 5, you're doing the exact same thing as somebody 3,000 miles away from you. The dog is doing the exact same thing as a dog 3,000 miles away from you. You know, everything is very much the same, and you can be much more specific. The Zen method is a little bit more, for lack of a better term, it's a little bit more mystical. It's a form of becoming one with your dog. And it's not something that in 6 weeks you're going to be one with your dog. It's something that becomes a part of you. And I don't want to sit here and start dropping a lot of fancy Buddhist terms, Japanese words that you're going to have to Google and understand. It's a whole thought process. And as I have learned in my dog training, I understand more and more why my dad always said he practiced dog training as an art, not as a science. And many people will tell you they practice it as a science, and that's great, and that works for them. Some artists paint by numbers. Leonardo da Vinci, I don't think, painted by numbers. And there's nothing wrong with painting by numbers. That's what I would have to do if I was going to paint. So, you know, the Zen method of dog training, it's a form of becoming one with a dog. It's a mindset. It's taking the ego out of it. And again, I cannot do it justice in the short period of time that I have with you today. But I will give you a little brief example. You know, our ego, dog trainers, we're a funny bunch. And we can be very egotistical. We can be very self-centered. We can think we're where it is. You know, it's very easy. I actually had a very egotistical moment a few weeks ago. I had this Doberman Pinscher who is 10 months old that came in for training. He was huge, intact, dragging this girl, you know, who's 100 pounds soaking wet. And I can't tell you the last time I worked so hard with a dog, just trying to get him leash broken. She had never put a collar on him. She had been walking him with a harness and a retractable. How this dog has not pulled her, you know, down, or actually he has, but how she has not been injured yet was beyond me. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, why did we sign up this dog? I haven't worked this hard in a long time. You know, I've been training dogs a long time. I don't want to work so hard anymore. This was great when I was 22. And, you know, I thought to myself, my own ego, like, well, you know, if I send her away, who's going to help her with this dog? First of all, every good dog trainer in New Jersey is booked right now. We're booked until March and April. So where is she going to go? I was already the 3rd dog trainer she's had. So there's my ego, like, oh, only I can fix this dog. I knew not only I could fix this dog, but she's already, you know, been kind of through the mill and spent a lot of money on this dog. And, you know, the dog wasn't even walking properly on a leash yet. So that was my ego. And, you know, that's one thing that the Zen method of dog training is, you have to release the ego. It's not about you. It's not about the dog. It's about forming a union with the dog, creating balance there, creating harmony with the dog. Not just physically, but also emotionally, and also being more intuitive about what the dog needs or doesn't need, when to push back, when to push forward. I'm going to briefly use an example. This morning, a friend tagged, and I'm not going to use her name because I don't know if she'd want me to use her name. She's a very humble, great dog trainer in South Florida and a good friend of mine. And she had put up a video of a dog she's working that had been trained on an electronic collar. There's nothing wrong with electronic collars. We'll save that for another video and we can get into that debate. But she was showing this dog that she'd been working with that had been trained on an e-collar. And the dog was just the way it was. And again, that's a whole other topic. And, you know, she said something to the effect of, remember when we used to just work dogs on leashes and collars? Whatever happened to that? Now everybody wants that magic button. You know, where's the magic button? Where's the remote? Where's the remote? Where's the remote to the TV? Where's the cell phone? We want that instant gratification. And I said to her in response to her tagging me on this video was that people forget when you use an e-collar very often, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but very often there's a disconnect between you and the dog. You lose the feeling of the dog. You're not really feeling that dog. You know, they say when you're tense, that tension goes right down to the end of the leash to the dog. But there's also other feelings that go up and down that leash from the dog to the owner or handler, back to the dog. And it's not always tension. You know, it's relaxation. It can be stress. It can be anxiety. It can be fear. Not just the tension that we feel, but when you're training a dog on an e-collar, what can happen is you lose the feeling and there's a disconnect between you and the dog. You are not feeling that dog. And when you're working with a dog in a Zen-like way, utilizing the Zen method, you're using all of your senses. And it's not just about sit, 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 which you're only supposed to say one time. It's about really feeling the dog and becoming one with the dog. Just looking at the time because I am a little short on time today. So although that doesn't really answer Zen fully, I did want to just start that conversation because that is a topic I will be continuing to develop and teaching you a little bit about Zen, the Zen method of dog training, and help you start a path to understanding it a little bit better. I will share with you what I share with my group classes. You know, the first week of class, I always have them walk through like a positive affirmation and visualization exercise. I had a lady, Maria, our manager here, she was starting a group class the other day, or she had class 2 with the dogs. And one woman walks in and she says, oh, and she's holding the leash tightly. We're failures. We're doing so terribly. And Fluffy is just not doing anything right. And I said, you know what? You're right. If you keep saying that, that's what you're going to get. So I worked with her for a little bit and tried to break her from saying we're failures. No, you're not failures. You're here in dog training class. You've already succeeded because you've taken the step to get your dog started in the right direction. Anytime you sit there and you say, oh, my dog is dumb. Oh, my dog is a failure. Oh, I'm an idiot. You are programming your brain and you are changing the chemicals in your brain to have that negative outlook. You know, if you're sad, if you're angry, you're depressed, those are addicting emotions. And you can actually, they have proven this, you can actually change the chemistry in your brain so that you are constantly feeling anger. You're constantly feeling sad. You're constantly feeling depressed. I don't want to go too Tony Robbins on you, but Cookie, sit. Just have a dog right here that needs to sit. But, you know, there is something to be said for that positive outlook, that positive energy. Not looking at your dog like they're stupid, because they're not. Trust me, your dog's way smarter than you think. And sometimes I think dogs are smarter than humans. Often they're smarter than humans. But you have to realize that if you're sitting there saying what a knucklehead your dog is, you know, you're going to get that. Start looking at your dog as though they're really smart, and they're there to teach you something as much as you are there to teach them something. So you have to kind of switch your brain a little bit and quit jumping into the negativity. Get out of the negativity, jump into the positive. It's going to help you so much with your training with your dog. And dogs sense that. They know. They might not, you know, sit there with their other dogs in the dog park. Don't go to the dog park. But they might not sit there with their other dog friends and say, oh, my owner thinks I'm an idiot. This is so depressing. I think I'm just going to run out in front of a car. They're not thinking like that, but they sense the tension. They sense the negativity. So it's really important that you move away from that negativity and start looking at things as positive outlooks. You know, when you're working with your dog and they seem to be not getting something, look in the mirror. What is it that you're not telling them? What is it that you're not making clear to them? It's super important that you start looking at yourself. Look in the mirror. What is my part in this? Why is my dog not getting it? Maybe I need to change something. Maybe you need to change your attitude. You know, and that's really a huge part of training, is changing your brain so that you think more positively about your dog. Because if you look for anything hard enough, you will find it. If you look for everything your dog is doing wrong, you're going to find it. If you look for everything your dog is doing right and all the progress your dog is making, you're going to find it, and you're going to find more. So it's super important that if you're having this situation where you're like walking into class, oh, my dog's a failure, let go of that. Your dog is not a failure, and neither are you. You have to start teaching yourself, treating yourself with more self-respect. There's no reason to talk to yourself like that. You're not a failure, and neither is your dog. You're in class. That's already a success for the day. So that's my little spiel for today on positive and negative self-talk. Anybody who's taken my group class knows that there's a whole series of exercises we do as far as positive visualization and positive affirmations go. But it's super important to start thinking about that. And if you have a lot of mantras in your head that you're saying about your dog, my dog's dumb, my dog's not smart, my dog keeps eating up my house, I want you to write everything down that you fear or don't like about your dog. And what I want you to do is take those statements, those written sentences, and change them into something positive. My dog is great around the house. My dog doesn't have accidents. Whatever it might be, change it into something very positive. So that is the one thing I wanted to discuss, or one of several things I wanted to talk about today. The last thing I want to address, and I have a few other things, but we're going to have to wait until next week for that. The last thing I want to address are collars. Now, I tell everybody, I personally like leather collars. I like the leather buckle collar. I don't have a dog with me right now that's wearing a leather buckle collar because everybody decides they want to get these pretty fancy collars. And let's face it, the plastic collars are less expensive, so people always buy these plastic collars, the clip-ons. Now, what's great about these collars is they're adjustable. What's bad about these collars is they're adjustable. So what ends up happening is, if your dog walker or you, and you haven't come to our training class yet, you decide to walk your pulling dog. See, believe it or not, they stretch a little bit more easily than this one is. Whew. Okay. What ends up happening is when you start walking your dog on these collars and you attach it to this ring right here, right there, your dog starts to pull. And when they start pulling on this ring, what ends up happening is this comes loose and this starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what ends up happening is, this is my friend C. C was given to us by B, one of our students. What ends up happening is a lot of times the collar can slide right over your dog's head. Now this collar, actually, I tested it before, but it's not open up all the way. But if it starts to open up all the way, it can slide right over your dog's head. So if somebody goes to grab your dog, they can slide right out of this collar. You don't want your dog to be able to slide over the collar. You want this collar to not be able to slide over your dog's head. Now, if you all look, you can see I can fit a whole hand between the dog's neck and the collar. You don't want that. You want there to be able to fit no more than 2 fingers. That is not too tight for the dog. So you have to make sure you make your collar small enough. So just slide it up here. It's adjustable. Cookie, you want me to show you, or you're a little camera shy? So that you can't fit more than 2 fingers between the dog and the collar. It's not going to be too tight for your dog, I promise. Make sure it's that snug, and you want it that snug so the collar doesn't come off. The other thing you need to do on the collar, let's see, Cookie has it. Put your name tags, your dog's name tags on the collar. They should have their rabies tag and they should have their name tag. You want to put it on this D ring. Make sure that when your kids or the dog walker or whoever, your neighbor comes over, that they don't clip the leash to these rings, these little rings on the tag, because what ends up happening is if the dog pulls, these rings will warp, the tag comes flying off and your dog will come loose. If you're not using a training collar for your dog, make sure the leash is attached to this part of the collar. And again, make sure that the collar is slid tightly enough so that you can't fit more than 2 fingers between your dog's neck and the collar. That's super, super important. We see it happen all the time. Dogs come in here. We're always tightening their collars, and we're telling the owners, stop. Now, if you're walking your dog on this D-ring, it's going to stretch when you have an adjustable collar. Stop walking your dog on the D-ring. Or if you're going to do that, don't let your dog pull, because it's only stretching when they pull. So they'll pull it so that it becomes too loose. Here. I'd let Cookie up here, but she's not really supposed to get on laps. So anyway, so make sure, I want everybody to go home or wherever you are right now, go check your dog's collar. Make sure there's no more than 2 fingers that can fit between your dog's neck and the collar. That's super important. Also check that the tags are up to date and they're still on there, because a lot of times people don't even notice that their name tags, their dog's ID tags, aren't even on the collar anymore. So I would say that's about it. I think I've answered all the questions that came in this week, and I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe and enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next Thursday. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.